that I know we should probably get into the episode, but I'm having too much fun. The web comic that Strange Planet.
No.
I posted one of them. That's the one with star damage.
Okay.
It's so good. I think it's pretty new, and it's like each comic is just like aliens experiencing Earth and culture, and they just take it very like, it's like the star damage thing. Like I like, your skin looks amazing. I stood too close to the sun or to the nearest star. It's star damage.
I just like, and that makes me think of what Patton Oswalt says about comedy. That what comedy is taking something ordinary and everyday, but presenting like sort of twisting it in such a way, like changing the perspective on it that you see it in a completely new way.
Yeah.
And that to me is like a perfect encapsulation of what Patton Oswalt's talking about, because now in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, it's star damage. Like that's totally what this is. Like it is the radiation of our nearest star damaging our skin. So we call it a suntan, but star damage is a much better term. They
posted one yesterday where it's like two parents and a baby alien, and they're going and they're trying to teach how to walk, and they're going bipedal. And one of them goes, "Why are you so cute?" And the other one goes, "It's because of his large head."
This is great. I have to read more of that.
Yeah, they're great. I love them.
Okay, so am I going to do the intro? Or are you doing the intro?
You can do the intro.
Okay. Hi, and welcome to Masters of Divinity. I don't know if that echo term worked or not, but hi. Today, I, Father Chuck, am your moderator. Joining me today is, as always, faithful, solid, loving, just never going to give you up, never going to let you down, never going to turn around and desert you, JP.
And he's a little puffy today.
JP, which stands for...
just playing.
Oh, I was going to say like just a lot of pollen.
Oh, but that too. Just pollen.
Pollen. It is pollen in a human suit.
That's like a horrifying image. That's
getting back to our little pregame thing. It's alien possession, but they're stupid. I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm just saying that would be just getting back to it. I think we have a story here. I think we've cracked a story.
I think we at least have a Rick and Morty episode.
We should see if they do like spec scripts from Rick and Morty.
I don't think they do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, Justin and Dan are pretty tight knit on this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, little. No, but I don't think they trust anybody.
But didn't they sign up for like 1 billion seasons? They need some people to get them going, because they take forever to write that show. I mean,
they did sign up for, I think it was like 74 episodes or something.
Yeah.
So like, they're all like really, really rich now. I don't know. I think that just means that they're more committed now, and I think the reason why it took so long is because they were just so focused on the story rather than just the animation. Okay. So I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, let's get in the episode. We're getting so distracted.
I know.
I'm a bad moderator. Okay. So one of the things we have talked about on this show off and on, we talk a lot about the nature of the church. We talk a lot about contemporary Christianity. We kind of we poke it in the eye a little bit because it's fun to do that. But one of the things we talked about several months back, we did an episode talking about Hypepriests and that whole realm of Christianity. The Christianity that's on Instagram with the roided out pastors and the coiffed hair and the really complicated shoes and Justin Bieber.
God and Gucci.
Yeah, God and Gucci.
Evangelicals.
Evangelicals is the greatest term. That's it. That's what they are known as now. Evangelicals. Are yeet evangelicals or just evangelicals?
I think it's just ye, right? Like Yeezy. Like
Yeezy, yeet.
I'm so white. It's
I don't know. And we're old.
Yeah.
So yesterday I happened upon on my Apple News, not Apple News Plus, because no, but Apple News app. It was a spotlight article on it because it seems the algorithm seems to know me, JP.
That's good.
And so it spits at me all these, these evangelical articles over the past several months. And so I read this one yesterday and I sent it to you. It was a Topic magazine. which I never heard of before, by the way. And it talked about this ultra hip church that is in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And so I sent it to you and Matt and wanted to get the conversation going, because one of the things that I was thinking about in particular, because I have my attitudes about this stuff. We as a show have talked about this. You have asked Matt and I questions about this kind of stuff, this kind of church, this kind of model.
Yeah.
And so what I thought would be an interesting thing is to turn it and to turn it and to make it talk to you about it.
Okay.
Because I feel like you're sort of the target demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I believe so. Yeah.
You're a millennial.
Uh-huh.
You are sort of you're a seeker kind of person. You're non-traditional in the sense that you're not just going to go walk into the First Baptist Church of Norman, Oklahoma to go to church, right? You're kind of over that. You've had some exposure to the church, and you've kind of walked away from a lot of it, or you have a very critical attitude about a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say in between churches. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so I feel like you, and you're artsy because you have a film, background, and, you've lived in LA and now you're growing weed. So you're just like so I feel like, you really are sort of a target demographic. And I know you well enough that you would never walk into one of those churches.
Hell no.
So what I want to know is,
maybe out of morbid curiosity.
Okay. So what I want to know is why doesn't it work on you, JP? Why are you kicking against the goads? Why are you rejecting the Holy Spirit's prompting to lead you to the church that clearly Jesus wanted everyone to do? Because Jesus, he wants that Graham ready church, he wants
God. Yeah. Well, it's very simple. It's funny. Actually, it's actually kind of funny how simple it is, because I pontificated on this like all night. I was reading the article. I'm like a mixture of horrified and like really asking myself, why am I horrified though? And I kind of feel like I just sort of I really got to the crux of how I feel about churches that approach it. Because first of all, I think one thing we have to acknowledge is this is nothing new.
Of course,
right? Nothing new at all. And it does kind of go back into something that we talk about a lot on this podcast, which is making Christianity more palpable. Mm-hmm. Making it more not accessible, but more, like they say in the article, relevant, right? And the thing is, I'm reading this description of the church and everything that they do, down to the Instagram accounts, to how obsessed they are with the fashion. Social media is like a big thing. Just the trends of the day are like this huge thing. And I'm not trying to be like, you're doing church wrong. I mean, they kind of are. But like, I don't want to be like an old curmudgeon that's like, oh, it should be more traditional. Don't wear that to church. You should be wearing a suit to church. Like, that's not the place I'm coming from. I want to make that very clear. Mm-hmm. But, when I think of going to church, I want to go to a place that brings me peace and happiness. And it allows me to be introspective, allows me to be more open, so I can absorb, what the pastor or priest is saying. And, I read everything that this church does, and it's like they're bringing in all these things that make my life worse. Like the narcissism of social media, the vanity of fashion, and just like, everyone is they said like the author of this article kept emphasizing like how beautiful everybody was and how trendy everybody was, and I'm like, man, that sounds like the last place I want to be, period. Because like that is contributing to like what the article explains as brokenness, right? Mm-hmm. Because he talks about three words are used very commonly within the church, which is relevant, authenticity, and brokenness. And right. When they talk about brokenness, he's talking about the depression everybody's dealing with, addiction, maybe some real world stuff that's happening to them. But I feel like you're using all these elements in the outside world that's contributing that and bringing that into a place where it's like you should be escaping that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm fascinated that you say that, because so here I am, the other side of it, an Episcopal priest.
Yeah.
In a church that is overwhelmingly made up of people in their 60s and older.
Yeah.
Desperate for millennials to come in. And so what happens is the tendency in my denomination is to try to look at what these kinds of churches are doing and replicate it here. And well, as a side note, the clergy of my generation, we don't want to do that. Yeah. But we're not the ones who are in positions of power in the church right now. We're all relatively new to the church. I've been a priest for 7 years. Like, I haven't been in that long. And so we look at the generation that's really kind of like our parents and older, who are in charge of the church, and they keep sort of chasing after this thing. And anyway, I mentioned that because my feeling as a millennial or a zennial, as they call us, is similar to yours, that I don't want screens and all that stuff in church, because I think church should be an escape from that. And, like, for instance, the absolute epidemic that we have with bullying among young people. Part of the issue with that we see with this is, like, when you and I, if we got bullied at school, which I'm willing to bet you and I both had some experience with that a little bit. Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
I learned karate because I had a bully. But the thing about bullying was you could then, once you left school, it kind of stopped. You could go home and you had a safe space, and it didn't follow you. Like, it may weigh on your conscience. You may not want to go to school the next day, but at least you got to breathe before you had to deal with it again. Now it follows you everywhere, because it takes place on social media. It takes place through text messaging, through Snapchat, through all of it. So finding places that are intentional about removing it so that somebody can have literal sanctuary from the problems of the world. Like, even if it's I'm just using bullying as one example, but there's a whole range of other things we could talk about. But I think that you're touching onto something, like you said, like, as they acknowledge the world has this brokenness, which is a buzzword, brokenness, that's really frustrating. And I've been hearing that a lot over the past decade. And it's, this thing of anxiety that people of our generation feel a lot. And a lot of us recognize that anxiety, that anxiety comes as a result of social media, which creates this situation of the anxiety around constantly maintaining this personal brand, constantly having to produce to look a certain way. And so I'm fascinated and somewhat heartwarmed to hear you say that you're not looking for more of that. You're looking for a reprieve from that.
A reprieve, and also a way to, like, learn how to deal with it. Okay, because I feel like you can go a totally opposite way, and I feel like a lot of people do, which is to completely demonize that culture, completely demonize things like Instagram and the day-to-day stuff and entertainment and media and everything that surrounds us. That's not necessarily what I want to do, because it is kind of part of my life. I just don't want it to have. I want to be able to deal with the negative effects.
Right.
And that's what I would like church to do. So when I hear about this church, it's like you're just bringing all of that in, and my life in church is not going to be different from my life outside of church, and I'm going to be just as depressed, just as anxious, just as desperate to prove myself to the people around me as I would be on the outside world.
It makes me think of a book I just started reading yesterday called Jen Odell's How to Do Nothing. I've been aware of this book for a couple of weeks, when anticipating its release, and it came out this week. And in her intro to the book, she talks about this phenomenon that we're talking about right now. And she says what she's trying to do with her book, she's offering a critique of the way that capitalism has sort of monetized our attention. Mm-hmm. But she says, but she's not trying to write a book that's a run for the hills, retreat from the internet, anti-technology screed. She's saying what she wants to do with the book is to make it a way in which to navigate this world.
Right.
You know, the internet's a tool and it's very helpful, and we should be able to embrace what's good about it while also being aware of the ways in which there's this other insidious factor that is using it on, you know, and influencing us. And so we need to be able to learn how to reject those things. And I feel like, as I'm already starting in the book, it sounds like it could be something that's really good for the church to hear, and how to, because it sounds a lot to me like what Jesus says, you know, of, as we sort of made it this cliche of being in the world but not of the world, right? You know, Jesus talks about being in the world but being left unstained, untainted by the world. And so, you know, the only way you can do that is to be in it. You can't just have, like, you know, your Christian ghetto that you go and retreat to, where you have your own, you know, Christianized version of everything else that's happening in the world. You have to, you know, you have to navigate it with it as it is. So one of the things I wanted to bring up is there's two quotes from the article that I wanted to mention. One was, and I shared it with you in our chat thread yesterday. The author of the article says that the church's ethos is one of practice casualness. Come as you are, but be chill about it. Now, there's a lot to take out of that quote, because one, casual. All right, we can talk about casual, and we'll get to that in a moment, because I would be curious to find out what you think casual means, because I think what you think casual means is very different from what they think casual means.
Yeah.
But the first thing is, you know, come as you are, right? Which is great. You know, the Episcopal Church's motto for the longest time has been the Episcopal Church welcomes you. So this idea of churches welcoming in people just as they are. We're not expecting anything extra from you. We're not, you know, we want you to be fully who you are as you enter into this space, whether you're a devout believer, whether you're a seeker, whether you're not sure. We want, you know, whether you're gay, straight, transgender, like whatever. We want you to be that person to come in.
Right.
But there's no qualifier, right? But be chill about it. And I kind of feel like this kind of evangelical, I love this term, I'm using it from now on. This evangelical Christianity is it's trying to, like, it says come as you are, but be chill about it. Basically, like, it doesn't like let's talk about, you know, the LGBTQ community for a moment. That there's this sort of attitude of, like, well, if you're gay, like, come on in, but just keep it quiet. Like, just don't make a big deal out of it, and we're not going to make a big deal out of it either. Like, we're not going to get up there and preach that it's wrong. Like, in our hearts, we think, nah, we can't do this. But as long as we just sort of don't talk about it, it'll sort of sort itself out. Like, I see it as the theological equivalent to when the Bobs fire Milton in Office Space, where it's like, oh, well, we just corrected the payroll error and the problem will sort of solve itself.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to commit to anything. We'll do this one thing behind the scenes, and then it'll handle it itself. And it's just,
are they saying just don't be judgmental? Is that what they're trying to say? Because I remember that quote. And I didn't really quite understand it. Like, aren't I being chill by being casual? I don't get it.
Yeah, and I think
three levels of chill I have to be on this church.
Yeah, I mean, because what my take on it is that it's a mindset around, like I said, like, well, on one level, like I said now, like, I think a good example of it is if somebody is from the LGBTQ community coming into that church, that it's the kind of church that's not going to say, like, you don't belong here because you're gay.
Right.
Even though if you come talk to us about getting married in this church, we're going to say we don't endorse that. But we're not going to put that front and center. Even though we as a church officially are going to say that we don't agree with your lifestyle and think that, you know, you are a sinner who needs to be changed or redeemed or whatever. Like, they're going to have that attitude, but they're not going to be up in front about it. But they're also going to expect you to not be upfront about it, about, you know, don't be coming in here with rainbow flags and all that kind of stuff. Like, let's just sort of keep this quiet. Right. And it's its own kind of, it's a type of politeness,
right, that
is dressed up in, like, I don't know, brand. It's filtered through this whole concept of branding. You know, make sure that, like, whatever you do sort of fits the brand of our place.
Not be inoffensive. Like, don't be I don't know. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, but the casual piece. Let's get to this.
Okay.
So I went to go see Shazam the other night, and right before Shazam came on, you know, there's the you know, a lot of movie theaters it's a movie co-theater, and they have, the different sort of like TV ads and stuff that roll before the film. And one was a local ad, and I've seen a lot of churches buy ad space and movie screens. And so there's a new evangelical, well, not new, it's been around for a while, evangelical church here in South Florida that's expanding. And they had an ad with their pastor. Of course, he's in like a really nice shirt, he's shaved head, and he's talking, and it's it's basically the image behind him is the postcard that I've gotten in the mail over the years, inviting me to their church for Easter, and it's like, come to church, we'll give you a free book and like all this stuff. But one of the things that they every year that they say is they go out of their way to say that it's casual. This is a casual church, so casual dress, come to church. And I feel like for the past, I've been hearing that message since I was at least in middle school, if not before. The idea of church saying, let's be, come as you are, dress as you are, like casual dress. Like even the Baptist church I grew up in was sort of like, we're not going to make a big deal out of expecting you to wear a suit and tie at church on Sunday, right? So on one hand, I'm wondering, is that even necessary to still tell people? Are there people out there really still thinking that you have to dress up to go to church? The other one is, and that's one conversation, and we can say that's basically yes or no. But the other question, this one's more for you to talk about maybe, is as I look at what they term casual, is casual its own kind of dress code?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I'll get to another quote here in a moment. Well, I don't have to say the quote. The author of the article, the reporter said, that he got nervous, that they got nervous before they entered the church. They ran across the street to a coffee shop because they said, am I cool enough to be here?
Right. Yeah.
So clearly it's not casual.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it were casual, you shouldn't have that kind of anxiety about how you appear when you walk into a church.
Yeah.
So what do we think so do we think that what casual is a different category now?
Probably. I mean, I think casual just kind of means like informal, but informal can still be like fashionable, and casual can be fashionable,
right?
So by saying casual, you're not really saying like, I think what they want to say is you don't have to impress us, but that's not really the message that's probably getting across to people, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I'm assuming the author's a guy, by the way. If this author is anxious, who's a non-Christian, checking out this church, if they are anxious about how they're going to be perceived walking into the church, then clearly it's not a casual place in the literal sense of the term.
That's true. No, I agree with that. And you know what it kind of reminds me of, Chuck? This might be a little bit of a kind of change, but it applies. I just remember when I was in a youth group, my youth pastor told me about a neighboring youth group, about an experiment they did, or I guess it was like a new strategy they did, where they like pushed heavily to get the most like popular kids in school to come to their youth group. Because they figure if they got the popular kids, like the sports captain and the head cheerleader and all these really popular people to become like Christians and come to youth group, then all of like their followers will want to go to youth group because it's like the cool thing to do. But they had to stop doing that because they found that what they were doing was just recreating all those hierarchies in high school that was making it so unbearable. So it's like people stopped going to youth group because like they got made fun of, or they were excluded from circles, or that's exactly what I was saying about why I wouldn't go to this church.
Yeah, in Donald Miller's Searching for God Knows What, there's an anecdote where he talks to a friend, similar story of a huge youth group in Oregon that did the exact same thing. Yeah. But the guy that was talking to him he was a nerd in high school, and he tells a story about how at his youth group they had some kind of like basically youth group Olympics. You put together a team and it was like this big, multi-week sort of activities, things like spin your head around a baseball bat and, run down a line and, just typical youth group games. And his team won. They beat the jocks. And he said it was the most embarrassing moment in his life because when the youth pastor called their team's name, no one clapped because they didn't know if it was okay to clap because it had been so geared around jocks and popular kids that they didn't know if it was that they were allowed, like if this was a good thing that the nerds won, because like you said, the hierarchies were still preserved.
Right. And so when I think about like the casualness, like by saying casual, I don't think you're really solving anything because you're telling people to come as you are, which I mean, you should come as you are.
Yeah.
But when you come as you are, when you bring yourself, you're bringing all the crap that other people have to deal with. You know what I mean? Like that affects other people around you, even when it comes to like being cash. I think. So it's like, I think instead of just stressing, being casual, people just be like, you don't have to impress anybody. Like, I think that's what they think they're stressing by saying casual, that you don't have to impress anybody. But I don't know, people aren't going to get that message.
Right. Well, it's one of the things I've been thinking about over the years that is like, I think of like AA. Yeah. Like AA is an organization that it sort of hits a lot of these things that we always talk about in the church world. You want to talk about a place that's non-judgmental, truly come as you are, casual, and we'll accept you. AA. And I had an idea back in the day when we were in college, and this is where I can talk a little bit. Well, I can talk a little bit about how I at one point was very, in another universe, JP, I'm one of these priests. We know this. We know that I am one of these pastors in another universe.
Oh, I probably am too. I'm planting churches in Africa. I'm planting Zoe churches all over Uganda, bro.
Yeah, dude. But I at one point had thought about having some kind of like Bible study gathering thing when we were in college that was sort of built on the AA model, but it was basically, I was going to call it Sinners Anonymous, and it was just an opportunity for us to confess.
It's very 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Right. But I think that in a way though, that's what the church is supposed to be, right? We're supposed to be a place where people come not to denigrate the brokenness that they talk about in these other churches. Cause I mean, people do experience, they feel broken, but I feel like that it's a buzzword. It's a hashtag brokenness. It's not, I mean, again, I've never been to this church, so I'm trying to be generous in my assumptions and everything, but would a homeless person who maybe has a couple of different personalities floating around in their brain, would they fit in there? Would they be welcome there? Or would that be seen as sort of cramping their style? Or would they be sort of would they be treated as something to put on the Instagram account in order to further the brand? Would they be truly embraced? And I feel like the church is supposed to truly embrace us in those kinds of really complicated, ugly, and messy moments without it being something that we can put on the feed.
My dystopian brain is like conjuring images of like this church being like, okay, we need to be more inclusive of the homeless people around us. How are we going to do that? And so by doing it, they like take him up into like they set up like a makeup room with like hairstylists.
Oh yeah.
And they decked him out in like Supreme clothing or whatever. And they put him in front of like Instagram walls just to be like, you're part of us now, bro.
Yeah.
And then they just make them leave.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. The thing is, this is probably not that far removed from what some people have done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does make me think a little bit about, there's an Episcopal priest whose work I'm very interested in. Her name is Becca Stevens. And part of what she does with her ministry, she started a ministry thing called Love Heals, and they sell beauty care products, but the beauty care products are made by women who have been trafficked, who live on the streets, who have been abused. And
I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so first off, one of the big things that she does for the women who are in the program, she provides them a place to live and then provides them regular like beauty treatments and stuff, because she says it's important for them to feel beautiful. These are women who have been, not only is there actually health piece, of like being able to do skincare for someone who's lived on the streets for a few years, but also that sense of being, what a spa day can basically do to any person, make them feel beautiful. And so there's an empowering piece to that. And so like, as you're saying, like I could see someone doing that, but not taking, just a slight change, and it becomes less of this is so that you can feel like a full human being, and more of this can make us look cool. Yeah. Again, it's that capitalistic commodification of human bodies that we often see. But yeah, I think it happens. I mean, let's be honest. it happens with mission trips. We did our episode on short-term missions a couple years ago. And, a lot of, there's a lot of these, hip evangelical churches that we know of here in South Florida that do mission trips, but the mission trips feel very much like they were tailored for people's.
Yeah. Be an American for a day, spend time with American for a week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, it becomes like the phrase that I've heard is like, poverty porn.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
painting faces in Bolivia. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, I saw a tweet the other day that said, if you, what is it? It's like, if you care more about something about like, if you care about all those Hondurans that you go to visit during your short-term mission trips, but then ignore them when they're trying to get into the border, then you have a serious, like, you need to seriously reconsider what you mean by mission or something like that. Scathing. So, all right. So we've talked about this place being, it's casual. It's what we mean by casual. So it's very hip.
Right.
I will say one of the things that I think about is, Jesus in the New Testament talks pretty directly about people who practice their righteousness in such a way that they will be noticed by others. This idea that we sort of flaunt our faith so that people will pay attention to us. And I wonder about a church that is geared around, say, Instagram. Everything we do is so that we encourage you to take photos and post, hashtag different things at the church as a promotional kind of thing. Is that the kind of thing Jesus is condemning the Pharisees for doing? Or am I being a little too harsh?
I don't know. I think it could be a degree to that, a degree of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we're clear, you mean like can I get you to kind of like expand on that a little bit, like comparing the Pharisees to?
Well, because so the Pharisees, the Pharisees in the New Testament were often. there's stories of them. They had Jesus condemns them for like their big phylacteries. So phylacteries are it's a little box that has the law in it, and they would put these on their and there are a number of Orthodox Jews that still do this. It's a thing of piety, wrapping their arms with the tephilim, which is the leather straps. But Jesus was condemning Pharisees of his time who would sort of put more and more scripture in their phylacteries as a way to kind of show off how much they had memorized and how much they knew and how how they were sort of superstars of the law.
Yeah.
And there's some stories from the ancient world of the phylacteries being so big that some of the Pharisees had to walk sideways down narrow streets because they couldn't fit. And so, so Jesus is very condemnatory of these people who do their religion so that people will notice them, and it's very showy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about, here's a church, and I start a church, and I'm encouraging you to post on social media. I've designed the space in such a way so that it looks great. So you take photos, we want you to take pictures of the praise band going, and then I promote, here are the hashtags you need to use for my church. Yeah. Like on one hand, I can see like, oh, it's a gospel, it's a gospel proclamation thing, right? Because I use social media for my church. I post stuff on Instagram, fairly frequently on the chapel's website or the chapel's Instagram account. And, and we do it as like a way to, we have a number of folks who have been involved with the church who've moved on, and they want to keep in touch with things that are going on. But there's also, I put tags on so that people will find what we're doing. But for me, it's, I see it as, I want people to start, think about what they're, if they see an image, it gets them thinking about, matters of faith and spirituality. Like, that's what I'm trying to encourage. And I think there's there's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering about, well,
I know what you're saying. Yeah, and I kind of feel like maybe it's sort of like, it is the same idea, but it's kind of like on an opposite side of the coin, where it's like, where it's so devoid of religion. That's we've made it accessible. We're making it like really, really devoid of religion. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
instead of showing how devoted I am, I'm showing how cash I am about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel,
that doesn't appeal to you.
no, not at all. Because no. Because A, it's a trap. B, and this is something I've kind of think about, and feel free to push back on me on this because it's a baby thought. I just thought of it this morning. But I've been thinking a lot about Christianity in the past few years in terms of like it's like something cultural, something that has to do with like heritage. I just kind of admire like if you could be like a cultural Muslim or a cultural Jew. You can't. There's not really that. I guess in Catholicism you can kind of be that, right?
Yeah.
But then you'd have to go to the Catholic Church, which,
That's a different episode.
I kind of wonder if what this church is doing is a result of needing church and Christianity to encompass every like molecule of your life instead of being like a part of it. So the fact that you have to live every day with Jesus on your mind, it's like, well, I need to make it more comfortable. I need to make it reflect more of like what my role is.
Here's what I think. I mean, I think that as a Christian, you should live your life every day with Jesus on your mind. Like,
right. I mean, and I know who I'm talking to. You're a priest, of course.
But I get what you're getting at is that it's not natural. It's the treatment, because this is the way that I was starting to feel. This is when the parallel universes diverged and I stopped going down the track from, the trajectory that was going to lead me toward Hypepriests. Oh God, I'd have been insufferable. Like I kind of want to peek into that universe because it's awful. Just for this,
awesome. You never know.
I mean, here, just for the sake of the listeners and viewers, if you see this thing right behind me that I'm pointing at, for those who are listening to us, I'm pointing at a mural. So JP knows this mural because it is the art barge. I started a Bible study at Palm Beach Atlantic University when we were students, where we read through chapters of the Bible, books of the Bible. And as we discussed the books that we were reading, what was going on in our lives, we worked on this art collage. So there were like 5 or 6 of us working on this collage. It was very hip. I mean, it was super hip.
Yeah.
And
it's because all the cool people came to it.
That's true. And so like, I felt that, I mean, there were some people that were like really cool that were, like Laura, really cool. Keelan,
kind of like really a cool underground thing that we had going at that college. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I was on a trajectory, but that was going to be, so that was going to be like the kind of church I was going to have, right? Like it was going to be like Thursday Night Live, TNL, the thing they had PBA, but it was, artsy and cool and all of that. I was definitely on that trajectory. So like I said, but there was a moment where the universe parted and I went a different way. And one was, part of it was that I felt that Jesus was being treated almost like a fashion accessory.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it was sort of that Jesus was, it's like Jesus wasn't the point of everything. He was sort of part of, he was sort of along for the ride with me. We see those really corny bumper stickers and license plates say God is my co-pilot. And I feel like, the same churches that are like, oh, God's got to be the pilot. But in the way we talk about it as though Jesus actually still is the co-pilot, right? Because I mean, I would hear people in that world, JP, and I'm sure you heard this too when you worked in the missions department, who would say things like, we're supposed to live our life. We're supposed to live our life for an audience of one. Right.
Yeah, it's familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And that started to bother me. I thought about it. I was like, then that means I'm on the stage. And I feel like the universe is conceived in such a way that God is on the stage and we're watching what God's up to, not I'm on the stage dancing and performing for God.
Right.
And I think so that's what, for me, when things began to change, I started to think about this stuff in a different way. So now when I look at the trajectory of where evangelicalism has gone, I see how it's doubled down more on that kind of model, this idea that I'm called to live on this stage for God to watch me.
Yeah.
And so God, and you know, I mean, like a good example is one of the old evangelical like anthems. It's not a hymn, it's an anthem, but it's the one that's I think Michael W. Smith wrote it. It's like a rose trampled on the ground.
Yeah.
You took the fall and thought of me above all. Like, me? You thought of me above everything else. Me, not us as a species, right? But me as an individual. Jesus thought of me above everything else in order to like that kind of self-centeredness is just and I feel like it's woven itself into this kind of Christianity, and it's given birth to what we're seeing now, which is this this attempt at making Christianity where it's like we want it to be like a part of your life, like a major part of your life.
Yeah.
But in a way that doesn't demand anything of you. In a way that but it does. It doesn't, right? I mean, it's sort of like basically what it is it boils down to this, I think. And I'm working my way through some thoughts right now, but I think it boils down to this, is that basically, and because I realize this in myself, and this was the kind of church that I would have formed in this parallel universe. And that is so that you can be Christian and be cool. There was this assumption that you couldn't be both.
Right. Yeah.
And so now there is this whole thing now of, we want you to be able to be Christian and cool. And we want that because that's how we're going to win the lost. And I think it has its early, you know, it's a nascent idea in the 70s with the Jesus people, the hippie movement. Like we've watched we see that in A Thief in the Night.
Oh yeah. Go down to Teen Town. It's the coolest place on earth, man.
Yeah.
Listen to the Fish Market Combo. They're a cool band. They're happening.
Yeah. The music is just as good as the stuff on the radio, JP. It's just as good.
Yeah.
Christian rock is just as cool as secular rock. Like
right.
Petra shreds. Petra shreds. We can listen to Petra.
Striper, they rule. Yeah.
Now they would say like Lecrae slaps. I don't know that, but but yeah, it's that you can be Christian and cool. And so I've meandered my way through that thought and probably lost half our listeners. But
well, no, it makes
you
sense.
Agree. So you say something about that. Tell me.
I never needed Christianity to be cool.
Okay.
I needed someone to tell me that like it's okay to not be cool.
Ooh.
You know, because I feel like being cool has led to so much of like my anxiety, like trying to be cool or wanting to be cool. And I'm also, and to all the cool people out there, I just want to tell you, it's okay that you're cool. Right. But there are some people who can't deal with it, who just aren't, who probably can't be. And they need to be told that it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing. And I feel like when church tries so hard to be cool, it's just more alienating for someone like me.
So, go ahead. Keep on.
And I was just going to say, I just remember like how, and also it just kind of like makes everything lame at the same time. Like it's kind of like the opposite of cool, which makes it even worse, I think. And it's like, because I just remember people saying like, no, GP, you got to go to church because it's cool. Not going to church is not cool. I'm like, stop. Yeah. Like you're making it worse. That's not true. Everyone knows that's not true.
It's kind of like the Truth ad campaign when we were kids in the 90s. You know, they finally realized that there's no way you're going to make smoking not look cool.
Yeah.
So they decided to hammer more about like health stuff and, you know, other things rather than trying to say like, oh, you're gonna look lame if you smoke. And it's like all you have to do is look at a picture of James Dean walking in the rain and be like, that's just not true.
Yeah.
Well, see, I'm glad you mentioned that because I had a thought and I kind of lost it. Give me a second. I'll get back to it. So we can edit this little bit out. But you were talking about you want someone to tell you that it's okay to not be cool.
So, someone told me that it was it's not cool to not go to church.
Right.
That's not true. It's actually really cool, but I need to be told that it's okay to not be cool.
Okay, so that gets to the thing where I'm really fascinated with all of this stuff is that, you know, I'm in this place, and we talked about this with the John Calvin episode. I mean, we're in this place where you like how I'm promoting other episodes to people listening for the first time. I'm like, well, I got to check that one out. Is to me the Christian message? I'm so blown away by just how really simple it is. Like it's radically simple. You know, it's as I think I mentioned in the episode. It's the only religion as far as I'm aware, that makes the claim that you are saved. Not that you can achieve salvation, not that here's what you need to do to be saved, right? Like every other religion basically has this path that leads to salvation. We're the only religion that has this really shocking claim that because of what Jesus did on the cross and Jesus did through the tomb, we are saved. It's there. Salvation has happened. And so we can tap into what that's, we may not feel the fulfillment of that salvation until Jesus returns. That's sort of the arc of the story, but that we can tap into living a saved life now. We can live as though we are no longer burdened by trying to save ourselves because of what Jesus has done. That's such a radically simple message, right? I mean, and to me, that is so good. That's such good news because you're looking at all of this stuff that people are doing, the anxieties that we have of trying to save ourselves, right? Being cool is a type of trying to save ourselves, and all of that. So this is a message that basically says you don't have to do that anymore. You can now live free. You're free. You're free from the burdens of any of that crap. Just, you're liberated because of this. So we've taken this very simple message and then we overcomplicated it, like throughout the Middle Ages, right? We turned it into this whole elaborate system of indulgences and fasting days and feast days and all of it, which, again, I participate in feasting and fast days and the religious institutional stuff. And I think it's a great supplement to the message and it helps live into the message, but I don't think it's like necessary for the message. But anyway, we've taken this whole thing, we complicated it so much at the Middle Ages. Then the Reformation kind of tried to start pulling it back. But I felt like what it did was, instead of just sort of reasserting what was simple and profound about the Christian faith, is that it got so focused on deconstructing the Christian faith that now we get to this place where what has been built is sort of what's been built from the leftovers rather than the original core thing. Right. And so now we have this thing that they try to claim it simple, right? Like, just believe in Jesus and let's, believe in Jesus and, that's really all you need. But no one acts like that. That's all you need, right? Because now it becomes, now you have the burden of, you have to be cool. You have the burden of, you have to do this, you have to do that. And it just becomes it becomes something else that is sort of dressed up in the veneer of simplicity, but it's not simple. Do you feel that way, or is this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. What else can I say? But totally yes.
Okay. Well, so as a seeker type, JP, what and as a seeker type who is not intrigued by the evangelical Instagram hipster church,
right?
And there's one other thing about this that I want to acknowledge. I'm going to put a pin in that because there's something else I think we kind of have to acknowledge about it, which we'll get to in a moment. But just for this personal moment, the message that they're proclaiming is clearly something you said doesn't work for you. Yeah. Because I think you see that it's kind of a different message. Sorry, my computer. So does the message of, like, you just simply are saved, like, does that sound like a compelling message to you? Or is that, like, I don't know, like, I just throw this thing out there.
I think it is. Because I don't have to, like, yeah, it is. Because I feel like when I think of these evangelical churches, and I know they're guilty of it. I can't spend every waking moment of my life wondering if I am, or if I'm going to lose it, or if it's or whatever. I've finally arrived at a point where it's like, I don't have to think about it anymore. Like, I'm just gonna live my life as if I am, like, as if it's already been done, it's already happened, and I'm just gonna focus on the things that make me happy and focus on helping other people and doing whatever I can to live the best life I can in this world. And so, yeah, I think the idea, like, of telling someone you're already saved, it's been done, I think that is compelling. I think to an older person, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it could drive a younger person crazy, because I do think, I mean, In the 20s, it's, I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but yeah.
Okay. Well, the other piece I wanted to acknowledge, and it's something that this article does, and I don't know that we're the best authority to talk about, but I do want to comment on it, is that, obviously, we have a podcast, so naturally we're two white guys. And the article points out that this church in Williamsburg is overwhelmingly not white.
That's interesting.
And which is an interesting thing, because evangelicalism for the longest time has been a very white thing.
Mm-hmm. And gentrified Williamsburg too.
Right.
Yeah.
So and again, I don't know whether that's authority to comment on this, but I think it's a thing to acknowledge that, there may be some limits to our perspective. But I do worry. Well, I mean, I guess the pastor there he's a black man, right?
That probably helps. Yeah.
I don't
know, like you said, I'm not really an authority. I can't really speak. He didn't really expand that much on it in the article either.
Right. I know he just commented on it, but because what I'm curious about is what I would be curious about is if this movement is legitimate in its openness toward racial diversity, right, or if it's just another brand building thing.
Right.
I
mean,
because I
don't want to be a cynic, but like I feel like the I don't know, it's in the pudding, right? Like
because that's kind of the way that I feel when I see that. I feel like that's in the undercurrent under a lot of the conversations around representation, like in Hollywood, is that I don't know that a lot of the people who talk about that they really care about it as much as they care about the fact that doing this is somehow going to help their bottom line. Like, they don't really care about people. They just care about, right now the young people care about diversity, so we're going to make sure that we have all these diverse people in our movies so that the young people will come see our movies. And then it's a further evidence of the insidiousness of capitalism.
Very neoliberal stance on diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder about that. But again, like we're very limited in our ability to talk about that. But I just want to at least acknowledge the fact that this church is not a white church.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I think it's also sort of a testament to kind of what their end goal is. For a church that's so obsessed with branding, the point of branding is to aid a company in its ultimate goal, which is what in capitalism, what is a company's ultimate goal? The bottom line. What's the bottom line? Exponential growth, right?
Right.
Not necessarily inclusion, but conversion, assimilation, gentrification.
Right.
So,
right. Well, that in Jen Odell's book, she talks about how she's recognized that there is a tie between the destruction of the environment and this kind of social media thing that we're seeing happening with the monetizing of people's attentions.
Yeah.
And she says that all of it ends up doing the same thing, is that it creates monoculture.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when you're if you've ever used Facebook's ad targeting system, targeting ad system, or whatever it's called, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can get pretty specific. You can target Black users. You can target Hispanic users. So it's like, I mean, is it a testament that they're a diverse, open church, or is it a testament that they just know how to market, baby?
Yeah, and is it also is it seeing people?
Yeah.
Or is it seeing demographics, right? It's just seeing those things, right? It's exactly. What is it? It's Jen Odell says that we live in a world where we interact with algorithms of each other, which I think is fascinating. So, all right. So just to change it a little bit. So at the Chapel St. Andrew, where I'm priest, and we've been engaged in this thing called Renewal Works, which is a program out of an organization, the Episcopal Church, called the Forward Movement, that is all about getting a grasp of where we are spiritually. Yeah. So, and how we can, and then what areas where there's a desire for growth in terms of our spiritual growth. So it's not about like, vision planning, strategic planning, anything like that. It's really just rooted in spirituality, engagement with scripture, traditions, things like that. Early in the meetings that we've had with this group, there's a small group of the parish that is met. Some of the things I was very surprised by early on in conversations with people was, on one hand, like one of the things I've been hearing ever since I first came here is, the thing every pastor hears when they're looking at a new church is, we want to grow the church.
Yeah,
want to grow the church. Okay, I get that. We want to grow the church. But one of the things that I was surprised by in this process is that of many of the folks who've, sort of said this, so they want to grow the church, these are folks that also said that the thing that attracted them, and this is a group of people that many of them came within the past 5 years to the Chapel of St. Andrew. So they've been here about as long as I've been here. And these are people all across age groups and racial and ethnic groups. So it's, older people as well as people in their 20s, saying that what attracted them to the Chapel of St. Andrew was that it was a smaller church.
Yeah.
They didn't want to go to a big church. They really wanted to go to a small church. And so there's definitely a place for that.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious to ask you, JP, as the millennial seeker, the target demographic person, what are your feelings on the idea of size of a congregation? Like if you were to go visit a church, I mean, well, I know you can speak to this in college because I remember you went to the Paramount Church a couple of times.
Yeah. That was an interesting experience. Yeah.
You said you kind of liked it, even though you were like the youngest person by like at least 40 years.
40 years. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. So I enjoy the intimacy about it, even though it is mostly extremely rich old people with very old timey hymns. But there is something about like the pastor is just right there. He's 2 pews ahead of me.
Right.
I never liked the idea of a completely inaccessible pastor or a pastor with like an army of lieutenants that you have to talk to. And like, that's, I never liked that. And this is personal preference. I don't know if like I speak for all millennials of my age. Obviously. Or millennials or whatever. I don't know what the hell I am anymore. I'm just old. I like the idea of a small church because I like that I could just be like, I could talk to the pastor. I don't want a rock star pastor. I don't need a celebrity pastor. I did go to church a little bit. I think guy's name was, I forgot. I don't want to get into that. But I don't know, like a smaller church means more community, it means more intimacy, it means more openness. I don't have to like navigate or climb ladders to get someone's attention, So I personally enjoy that. Yeah.
There's have you heard of Dunbar's number? No. So Dunbar was I think an anthropologist. And just on top of that, he was friends with the Gore family, not Al Gore, but the Gore-Tex, like jacket making textile company. And he did a bunch of historical research and found that throughout human societies, he saw that the number 150 like appears in terms of people groups. And so he did this research and found that like 100, 150, I think that's what it is. Anyway, he did this bunch of research to find that that's like the maximum number that someone can maintain like any kind of relationships. Once you get above that number, it sort of starts to break down. And so I mentioned the Gore-Tex thing. So Gore-Tex as a company took his ideas and they applied it to their workshops. And so when they would build a workshop up until they had like 150 people, and then once they got more than that, they would split the workshop because they found that worker morale and other things broke down when they got too big because they felt there was a lack of community. They felt that they became more numbers in a machine rather than personalities and people, and that they enjoyed work less when they came into work with a larger factory. And so this is the way Gore-Tex and a number of other companies have started doing things. And I mentioned that because to me, it's a thing that seems to make a lot of sense within the church. And we had this enterprise for a while in the Episcopal Church where basically if a congregation got to a certain size, we would then plant a new church to kind of maintain smaller congregations. That's what happened in South Florida. And I mean, I don't know that it's all that sustainable in the long run because of the fluctuations of property values and cost of living and things like that. But
it seems very different from what Christ Fellowship is doing, right? Like where it's just like taking over South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's one church. Yeah, what they're doing is, I mean, part of it is like that, right? They want to have like a local satellite branch. By the way, I remember when Relevant magazine back in the early 2000s for those who don't know, Relevant is an evangelical magazine that's really kind of helped give birth to everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
But they did this whole article on the satellite church movement. And people were saying things like, it's so great. I have everything about the church that I love, but it's right here in my neighborhood. And I remember thinking, oh, you discovered the denomination, this thing that we've had for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church was doing that.
Right.
Your local parish.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what they do is, of course, they satellite feed the senior pastor preaching in all of those churches, and that's kind of scary to me. I mean,
that's weird. That's so Orwellian to me. Like,
it felt very Orwellian to me. As I'm going to go into pastoral counseling mode for a moment. What I'm hearing you saying, JP,
okay.
What I hear you saying is that there's a common thread that I think that goes through all of this, and it's something that I think of when I first started here at St. Andrew's, at the Chapel of St. Andrew. I wasn't yet a chaplain at St. Andrew's School, but I was invited to give a chapel talk at the high school chapel during this big thing that we do called Spiritual Journey Week, which is why Michael Funson was with us last week, because she was here to help us with that event.
Right.
So almost 6 years ago, first Spiritual Journey Week that I'm a part of, they invited me to be one of the speakers. And so what I did was I did a whole chapel thing on surfing and spirituality. So I brought a couple of my surfboards up and I talked about, my life as a surfer. And then I talked about how it affected my spirituality and all that. I felt like you could hear a pin drop in the chapel. Like the kids were just not engaged. Like I didn't feel like I was engaging. I didn't feel like there was anything happening. It felt very like disconnected.
Okay.
And so I felt like I bombed this. Well, afterward, one of the chaplains and some other teachers came up to me. They said, that was really great. And said, we couldn't believe it. The kids were quiet the whole time. Is that a good thing? Is that a great thing?
That's funny.
And what everyone told me was that more than anything that I said in terms of content, they said that my tone exuded authenticity. And that's what the kids cared about more than anything, was that you would be authentic. And I think about that a lot. And I feel like that's part of the through line of everything we've talked about today, is that question of authenticity. And so the question of whether or not this kind of church thing and what we're putting out there, is it authentic or is it just for the brand? And I think that I have a suspicion that it's not authentic.
Well, I kind of feel like authentic in this case can be sort of flexible. Like authentic to what? I think this church that's described in this article is extremely authentic. It's authentic in that it totally replicates the cold, alienating world I try to escape every day. Very authentic.
Oh, that's fair. So that's interesting. Okay, that's a fair statement. So my conclusion, my takeaway on this episode is that if there are any church leaders and other folks listening to this episode, that what we are probably one of the things that's necessary for us, at least, if JP is indicative of plenty of people in the world, if his attitudes and feelings are not that unique, then it says that perhaps we really should be trying to find ways to navigate this kind of nightmare world of technology that we're dealing with. I heard someone recently refer to Twitter as the fresh hell machine. That it's less about replicating the experience that we see every day and basically saying like, oh, because I mean, that kind of gets to a similar feeling that I have, is that when church becomes like Starbucks, then why not just go to Starbucks?
Yeah. Oh, totally. If church, like it's better anyway. Like, if church is going to be a rock concert, why not just go to a Foo Fighters concert? Why you got to go to a bad one?
Exactly.
Want to hear a guy tell bad jokes on stage? I'll go see a comedian who does it better.
Right. I mean, let's be honest. Like, if church, and that's another thing that just is the lack of sacrament.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of church when you don't have a sacrament? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, like you can go. Like, I've learned profound life lessons from listening to Patton Oswalt, who is a very vocal atheist.
And he's a very wise man.
And a very wise man. Yeah.
A lot.
Like, I mean, his stand-up special after his wife died.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. Incredible. Right? You want I could keep going, so I'm not going to. So
we're gonna have him on the show next week. So keep that in mind.
That'd be awesome. But yeah, so I think that idea of, so that's what we want. That's what the world, I think, and I agree with you on this, because I think that's for me. Like, if I were not an ordained person and I were, and I were living as a lay person, doing any range of other things I could be doing, right? Teaching, writing, whatever, that if I'm going to go to church, I want someone like you're saying to be able to show us how to navigate this. And that's what the church has done well for centuries, is to say, here's the state of the world. This is the way it is. Now, here's how you live in it, rather than retreat from it, how to confront it, how to deal with it, how to bring grace into it, how to bring acceptance. And it's not about rejecting it, but how to confront it and subvert it and do the things that need to be done in order for the kingdom of God to blossom in the midst of it. Because again, Jesus came to us in the midst of it. He didn't go like hang out in the wilderness and call us out to him. Like, he lived among the cities and among the people and died a political death. I mean, it's all, it's all, he embodied, the some of the worst experiences that humanity has. And we're called to follow him into that. So I think that's good, JP. Thank you. If for nothing, it's helpful for me.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting if any of my parishioners listening to this episode sort of are like, oh, I saw what you were, are you trying to like backdoor a message to us? Which I wasn't, but hey, it gives, if it gets us talking, it's us talking.
Yeah.
All right. So that is definitely all the time we have today. I want to thank JP.
You're so welcome. I love being on this end of the conversation. It's kind of a vacation. You mean I just get to talk about me? Wow, that's
right.
I love it. I love that little bit of narcissism. That's great.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's good. You get to live with the kind of crap that I live with every day. You
want to switch places? Maybe I could be the head of the congregation. You could work in the podcast this weekend.
That'd be cool. I wonder how much we do have a bit of a resemblance. I wonder how many people would even notice.
I don't think that's Charles. I don't.
Yeah, because you're up there and you're like, look at my deacon. Like, what do I do next?
Just be like, shaka, brah.
Why is he in a V-neck? Does he not understand? He wears a dress now. Well, thank you, JP, for being with us. And be sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell.
Ring those bells. Smash that subscribe button. And comment, review.
Oh yeah, definitely do the commenting thing. That's helpful. And tell your friends. Airdrop our episodes to random people that didn't turn off their airdrop function in like, if you're, because we're getting near. Well, also it's Easter's coming up, so church, do that. The Chapel of St. Andrew in Boca Raton is a great place for Easter if you want to come. We have all of our stuff online at thechapelfba.org. And you get to hear me in a completely different context. But go to church and maybe go to a small church. They would love you if you showed up.
Or, if you just go to Hype Church if you want, just to experience it and tell us how it was.
If you want to be a guest on our show.
Go to the Zoe Church. I have to know what goes on there, man.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah. Is that the one
I think I went to Mosaic when I was in LA, by the way. I feel like I went there once. I went to some church that was in a nightclub that resembled like a Mayan temple, which was ironic.
Very, very ironic. Human sacrifice. All right. Well, So yes, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt. Oh, by the way, Matt's been here all along. We just never let him talk. So thank you, Matt.
Oh, Matt, what do you think, buddy? Your thoughts?
I'd like superimpose him in an image on the episode. And with all of that, if you're an Easter person, have a blessed and holy week and holy Easter. Jesus Christ is risen. Celebrate that fact. And as always, good journey.
Good journey.